What's up, everybody? Brady Figuel here. It is finally time for a review of the new Seether album, The Surface Seems So Far, out 2 weeks ago today, September 20th. I've really been itching to get my thoughts out about this album. I had to give myself a lot of time with it. Seether's one of my favorite rock bands. I loved their last 3 albums, and I find that the more I like a band, the more time I need with the new albums to really soak them in and fully collect my thoughts on it. And I really wasn't sure what to expect, considering there have been quite a few changes in their music with their last few albums. This album follows up 2020's Si Vis Pacem Parabellum, which may just be my favorite Seether album to date. That album just gave me exactly what I wanted to hear from Seether's music, which is them kind of adding a bit more nuance, a bit more of a focus on mood, and also maintaining the heavier sound that they had gone with their previous album, Poison the Parish. All of those factors together made this album feel much more like an alt metal album, like something you'd hear from like Chevelle or Perfect Circle or Deftones. I got a lot of those vibes in that album as opposed to just the straight up butt rock sound that they had been using pretty much for their entire catalog throughout the 2000s up until arguably Poison the Parish. And even that album still had elements of it. But again, I really wasn't sure what to expect with this album. Part of me wanted them to continue that sound, and part of me wanted them to kind of experiment in new ways. But at the same time, though, I mean, going from hard rock to alt metal really isn't that big of a shift in the first place. So there was a bit of trepidation as far as what would they have to do. They definitely had to kind of burst through a creative ceiling if they were going to reinvent themselves again. Unfortunately, though, we didn't quite get that, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But one thing I really didn't expect was for them to, at times on this album, really go back to their initial post-grunge roots, like Semblance of Me, Walls Come Down, Same Mistakes especially. Some of the parts and some of the melodies on those songs sound like they could be straight off of Seether's first 3 albums. The clean guitar parts especially, and Sean Morgan's more somber, grunge-style vocal cadences. I think Same Mistakes is probably the biggest example of that. And although I do still really enjoy this album, I find that those moments were the most underwhelming moments on the album. They just felt really safe for me. If you saw my reaction video to Judas Mind, you'll remember that one of my, I don't know if I want to say criticisms, but something I noticed in the song the first time I heard it was that it felt pretty safe for Seether. Now, would I say that the word safe is a blanket term to describe the whole album? For the most part, yes. Not the entire album, but for the most part, yes. I would say this is a much safer album than arguably their last 3 albums. Not necessarily a bad thing. For me, it really just comes more down to the execution of it. Like, again, take Same Mistakes, for example, with its intro, which is very disclaimer-esque. But then it kicks into this, I don't know if you want to call it a riff, but just this open chord section that wouldn't be out of place on, like, a Deftones or a Superheaven record. I will say one thing I do really enjoy about Surface Seems So Far as a whole is its overall dark and, at times, depressing mood. And that is present in literally the entire album, whether it's the heavier cuts or the more somber cuts. Obviously, Judas Mind with its more ominous intro and its contrast between, again, those more ominous parts and those really heavy parts, especially Sean Morgan's screams on that song. His screams on this record are phenomenal, by the way. Another thing I pointed out in my my reaction of Judas Mind was Sean Morgan's vocals, which seemed like he was singing a bit higher of a register than he usually does. And that is a theme throughout this whole album. I really do think Sean pushes himself as a vocalist, which does automatically set this album apart from any of Seether's past releases. So now that I've had this long introduction to this review, I think the best way I can summarize this album is that The Surface Seems So Far is an overall great album with a few bumps in the road here and there. But starting positive, I will say that the second single, Illusion, is maybe a top 10 Seether song, period, for me. I fucking love this song. It is so catchy and hooky and moody. It has everything I could possibly want in a Seether song. That mid-tempo churn that this song has is just fucking awesome. That real mean bridge riff with those screams from Sean. This is just such a beast of a song. I also find myself really enjoying the track Paint the World with its, again, eerie, ominous intro riff. The chorus is super catchy and kind of brings back that dynamic on the last record with that kind of contrast between the lead vocals and the backing vocals. The bridge of the song is great as well, with, again, that just evil sounding riff that transitions into those like echoey background vocals with, again, that super groovy riff behind it. It makes the bridge and the entire song feel just so climactic. I also really like what this song is saying. At least to me, it rings in as like the worst and the lowest types of people, whether it's pedophiles or murderers, still having voices in today's society. Lines like, "We cannot let them decide the age of consent for pedicide," and "their sickness is out on display." I just love the metaphorical take on this theme. And the lyrics as a whole on this album I think are great as well. Sean Morgan, as always, makes heavy use of metaphors, but not in a way that you can't really tell what he's talking about. "Lost All Control" is another really big highlight for me. That intro bass line is just ear candy to me. This is a really obscure reference, but it gave me something about the melody. Sounds like it was straight out of like the Halo 2 soundtrack. It actually reminded me so much of Halo 2 that I replayed the entire campaign. And I could confidently say that a very similar bass line, very similar melody, is played in the mission Outskirts. So if there's any Halo fans watching this, listen to Lost All Control and then play the mission Outskirts on Halo 2. But this is just another great song. It definitely does give me vibes from their last album of more that alt metal type sound, with again another really full sounding chorus, those eerie guitar melodies and the verses too. "Try to Heal" is an interesting one because initially this song actually turned me off because it does have kind of a jarring contrast in its parts. Like you start with that, again, heavy, really heavy actually, maybe the heaviest riff on the album, intro riff, and then it goes straight from that into this somber, like, melodic electronic verse. And then the chorus is almost a bit sugary at times. So like the moods in the songs are a bit conflicting, but as I listen to the song more, I stopped caring about it because of just how much I love those individual parts. Like when Sean's vocals kick in that first verse with the electronic drums behind it, that gives me just chills every single time. I love his vocal melodies there. There's also that groovy bridge riff that just is so just nasty sounding. You get more piercing screams from Sean. And the song "Regret" that closes the album is one of the most emotional songs I've ever heard from this band. It's just this idea of like just letting yourself soak in your guilt and your regret after losing someone you love. What a depressing way to end this fucking album, but it's the perfect way to do it. The lyrics in this song are absolutely beautiful, and I love the way Sean delivers them, especially in the way he says, "I've seen the ways that love can pass for hate." "Walls Come Down and Semblance of Me" also have some really beautiful melodies spread throughout the songs. But like I said, there are a few bumps in the road here and there. I really like Sean's emphasis on kind of pushing himself as a vocalist, but at times it does have its drawbacks. Like, he does sound a bit strained on the chorus of the song "Beneath the Veil," which is probably my least favorite song on here. There's also the bridge of the song "Regret," where he's kind of doing those belting style vocals, and he sounds really nasally, which kind of makes the song lose its emotional weight and makes it sound a little bit goofy. I already singled out "Try to Heal" as I do think the structure of the song, the conflicting parts, are a bit jarring when listening to the song the full length through. And I do enjoy the track "Dead on the Vine," but some of the lyrics in that song felt a bit lazy, I guess. Like, "I felt like a coward that's missing a spine." Also, the "unspoken asshole" line. Again, it just kind of made it lose its luster a little bit. Although I do like the chugs in the main riff of that song, and it is overall an energetic song. I know a lot of people have been critical of the production of the last few Seether records. I actually really like it. I think that extra murkiness to it and that more dirty production makes them sound a lot less butt rock than if they were to have a crisp, clean production. And I still think this is a great album. I don't think it's as good as arguably their last two. I'd probably put it on the same level as Isolate and Medicate for me personally. But I'm glad I waited a little bit because the album definitely had to grow on me. I wasn't really feeling it after like the first listen or two. But after letting it grow on me, I could confidently give this album a score of 26 out of 30. Thank you guys very much for watching. Definitely comment your thoughts on this album below. I'd love to discuss them. And until next time, I will see you guys later. Peace.